Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Every now and then you hear a story that really makes you go, huh? And Joshua sent me one from Fox News out of California. California sheriff's deputies say they didn't know it was illegal to lie about evidence on police reports. Now, you might say, Steve, that's a crazy thing for them to say. Well, worse, apparently they said this under oath in front of a grand jury. Meaning this should say California sheriff's deputies testified they didn't know it was illegal to lie about evidence on police reports. And that is an even higher level of insanity. Stephanie Pagonis wrote the story for Fox News. Two former Orange County sheriff's deputies told a California grand jury they did not know it was against the law to falsify police documents. That's an offense that led to their firing and conviction amid a widespread department evidence scandal that came to light last year, according to a local report. The two testified to a grand jury in September that they were never told it was illegal to write in police reports that they had submitted evidence when they actually had not. So they would apparently put in their police report that they put something in evidence. They didn't put it in evidence. They knew they didn't put it in evidence, but they put it in the report. And apparently, news organizations and others have seen the transcripts and have confirmed that that is, in fact, what they testified to. Deputies typically were expected to submit evidence by the end of their workdays. So, deputy goes out, does an investigation, and comes into possession of some evidence. He puts in his report that is booked into evidence, and then submits it at the end of the day. The two were among the most prominent and among the worst of the OCSD members involved in the evidence scandal, which came to light in November 2019, according to the Orange County Register, which broke the story. They were allegedly two of at least 17 deputies investigated for potential charges for allegedly claiming in reports that they had booked evidence as required, but failing to do so sometimes until months later. And you might say, Steve, but what's the problem here? And I know most of you aren't saying it, some of you might be. So let's suppose that you have a case that you're working on and you are a sheriff's deputy and you come into possession of this. It's a widget. This widget is a piece of evidence that is crucial to the case. It turns out that this widget has fingerprints on it. It's got DNA on it. It is a unique widget, and it is of a manufacturer that ties the defendant in some way. This widget is extremely important and is going to get introduced into evidence at trial. Okay? Assume those facts are true. You're the deputy who collected that at the scene. You were at the scene. You collected this. You took this. You picked it up with tongs. You put it in a plastic bag. You sealed it. And you wrote your name and some information on it, on the bag. And you sealed the bag. Okay? When you are on the stand testifying, the prosecutor is going to stand up and say, I'm holding in my hand what's been marked for identification purposes only as the People's Exhibit number 1. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Yes, you may. Sir, I'm now handing you what's been marked People's Exhibit number 1 for identification purposes. I'm going to ask you, do you know what that is? Yes, I do. What is it? It is a widget. Why do you know what it is? I found this widget at the scene of the crime. When? Date. Where is the scene of the crime? Tell us the scene of the crime. What did you do with the widget when you found it? Extremely important. Did he pick it up and handle it? Put his hands all over it? That'd be important to know, wouldn't it? No. I very, very carefully approached it with tongs so as not to contaminate it. Put it in a plastic evidence bag, dropped it in, and sealed it. Marked it with the information you see on the front right there, sir. This is that widget. That is not the end of the testimony, my friend. What did you do with that widget after you put it in the bag and marked it? I brought it back to the station. What did you do with it then? I handed it to the lab technician who handles our evidence, and he put his initials directly below mine on the bag with the date and time I handed it to him. Do you know what he did with it at that point? Yes, I watched as he put it into an evidence locker. What did he do then? He locked the locker. Did you ever see that again? Yes, I was there the next day when he unlocked the locker, took the bag out and tested it right in front of me. Okay? And then you would probably then call in the guy who tested it, the technician, and so on. But they refer to that chain of custody of who handled it, where it went, how it got from point A to point B to point C to be actually in the courtroom. And that's extremely important. And the people who watched the O.J. Simpson trial will remember how that came up over and over again, because there was all kinds of people filming the crime scene, and there were evidence technicians walking around carrying stuff. And they'd actually say, isn't it true that's you in the video? Yeah, what do you have in your right hand? That's a bag. What's in the bag? Evidence. What evidence? And they'd go through this. It becomes extremely important. So if the guy puts in his report that I found the widget at the scene, I bagged it, tagged it, and then brought it into the station and gave it to the evidence technician, and I put that in my report, and it turns out that I didn't actually bring it back to the station for a month, that's a problem. That's a very serious problem. It jeopardizes the entire case for each and every piece of evidence. OCSD spokesperson Carrie Brown told Fox News that deputies are repeatedly trained on evidence, chain of custody, and booking of evidence, which are taught in both the Basic Police Academy and in the department's Field Training Officer program. But booking evidence is the process of taking the evidence back to the station and making an inventory of the fact that it came into the station and went into the right place or into the right hands. In addition, evidence booking protocols and policy now require deputies to include confirmation of the booked evidence in their report, which is then reviewed by a supervisor before being signed off. So now they've got to be babysat. The department also conducts randomized spot checks every month, pulling reports and cross-referencing the evidence booking system to ensure evidence is booked as documented. The scandal was uncovered during an internal audit that examined police documents from February 2016 to February 2018 and found that over the course of the 2-year period, 27% of the department's deputies were found to have taken 31 days or more to book evidence. Of the 450 reports reviewed for a second audit, 57 involved deputies who falsely claimed to have submitted evidence, according to the Register. Assistant Public Defender Scott Sanders previously described how literally 1,100 deputies booked evidence late and was only doing a partial audits. Both deputies pleaded guilty in June to misdemeanor charges and in turn avoided jail time. Their admission came out during a September 21st grand jury hearing for a different deputy, according to the Register. According to the report, that deputy was a 19-year veteran who did not take the plea deal, allegedly lied in a police report from 2017, claiming he had submitted as evidence things that he had not. And so he had apparently filed a false police report, at least partially. And the idea that these guys take the stand, they're police officers, and they say they didn't know it was illegal to lie in a police report, is the kind of argument that is so far beyond the pale that you wonder about someone who's making it and you realize, oh, that's the only thing they've got. What else are they going to say? You did this repeatedly. You can't admit you did it on purpose, but it's crazy. It's crazy. And now you understand, I'm sure without me telling you this, it appears to have happened hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And in each instance where it happened, if the defendant was not told the truth regarding how the evidence was handled, the defendant's entitled to a new trial right now. Because that's an important piece of the story. So the idea that the widget we talked about earlier, that is important to the story, and the chain of custody is partially documented in the police report, and it might be documented elsewhere in other reports, but there's documentation for all of this. And if it turns out that documentation is false, okay, if it took a guy a month to book this piece of evidence, where was it in the meantime? Was it in his desk? Was it in his car? Did he take it home and play with it? What? Why wouldn't you book it immediately? I mean, that's the crazy part. But there's several crazy parts here. And I don't know which is crazier. that they'd wait a month to book something, which seems idiotic, or they would say they didn't know it was wrong to lie in a police report. You're police. And one of the things that happens whenever I talk about the police getting away with stuff or breaking the rules is people will point out and say, Steve, isn't it illegal for us to lie to the police? Oh, it is. It is. It is. And you'll get in trouble if you lie to the police. And police are allowed to lie to you as part of an investigation. They call it an investigative technique, right? Yes, they're allowed. So there are situations where they're allowed to lie. So maybe it's not that big of a stretch for them to say, well, I didn't know I'm not allowed to lie here. I'm allowed to lie there. It's weird. It's weird. But Joshua sent it to me. Fox News reported it. Thank you very much. Stephanie Pagonis wrote it. And it's a crazy story out of Orange County. California sheriff's deputies testified they didn't know it was illegal to lie about evidence on their own police reports. It's bizarre. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Within this pitch black darkness, you are shining so brightly. Take my hand, save me.